Rain taps an unassuming rhythm against the bedroom window. The shy percussion of this early morning shower is the first thing Mira registers as her mind floats up from dreaming into waking. She listens to individual drops landing and expanding as tiny rings of sound against the pane. She tries to count them 1, 2, 3, and then they arrive too quickly, merging into a silvery flow. She stops counting and allows herself to hear them collectively, like many small grains of rice sliding together into a glass jar. To her, this is the music of the season. The patter of rain, the nearly timid rustle of leaves, and the sense of the year gathering itself toward a close. She pictures the saturated colors of autumn and smiles, feeling affection for the beauty that slowly gathers itself in that gradual winding down. She stretches long beneath the covers, her arms reaching overhead. It is still quite dark beyond the glass, but morning is near, and she will need to rise soon. She will pull on her coat and hat and walk down to her bakehouse to prepare for the first arrivals of the day. Mira begins earlier than her neighbors, but she does not begrudge the hour. She cares for her work and anticipates lighting the ovens and preparing the very first cup of coffee. The smiles that meet her across the counter make the dawn routine deeply worthwhile, and the early start also means she reaches evening grateful and ready for restfulness the moment it comes. She sits up, folds the blankets back, and lets her feet dangle over the edge of the bed. Her toes sink into the plush, waiting embrace of warm slippers. She slips them on and stands, yawning once again. It feels natural to be extra quiet at this hour, to match the hush outside as night loosens and day gathers itself. Through the kitchen window, a faint gray wash begins to reveal the outline of the house across the way. Her neighbor there is often later to rise. He usually takes his time, drinks coffee at an easy pace, and only then steps into his small garden to clip the grass, inspect the shrubs, and greet each flower in turn. He keeps a collection of plants Mira thinks are the loveliest she has ever seen. Gratitude rises in her as she thinks of the people who share this little street. How considerate they are, how friendly. She heats water and prepares her favorite morning drink, strong black tea. A splash of milk spirals in and makes soft tendrils of cream through the darker swirls as it blends. Carefully, she carries the cup to her spot on the wooden bench at the window. Steam touches her face. She inhales and takes that first mindful sip. The initial taste always seems the finest, rich, reassuring. The warmth moves inward as if kindled embers were glowing inside on a crisp day. Clouds stretch in a continuous, heavy cover across the sky. It does not look as though the rain plans to pause, and she finds that perfectly acceptable. In this season, rain is customary, and it brings with it rituals she enjoys. Without rain, there would be less reason to choose a particularly soft sweater, fewer occasions to step into beloved rubber boots, fewer moments to gather a cheerful umbrella and step into the day beneath a small dome of color. So long as one is dressed warmly and has a mug of something soothing, rain is easy to like. She drinks the last of her tea, rinses the cup in the sink, and sets it to dry on a slim bamboo rack. Then she dresses, glances back at the bed with a fondness that promises later rest, and heads toward the door. Down the hall, she reaches for her felt hat and woolen scarf, picks up the bright yellow umbrella, and steps outside. The door clicks shut behind her. With a practiced motion, she opens the umbrella, and it springs to life in a quick burst of sunshine color over her head. The window to her right frames a little white cat she has come to know. The cat's person is a kind woman who generally wears her hair in a neat bun, and the cat often surveys the street from this perch. It studies Mira without revealing much of anything. Mira lifts a hand in a small wave and smiles. Apart from this fluffy observer, the neighborhood still slumbers. Most windows remain darkened. A few porch lights glow above brick steps. The The street lamps pool soft yellow light into the puddles that gather along the pavement. She listens to the whisper of rain beating and sliding down the umbrella's fabric. Under the warm yellow canopy, she feels sheltered, the way she did as a child building blanket forts, enclosed beneath layers of cotton and fleece, appreciating the illusion that the entire world had been condensed into a peaceful space made just for her. She pulls the wool scarf closer, steps around one puddle, hops lightly over another, and follows the gentle slope downhill toward the small parking area behind the bakehouse. Even from a distance, the shop door brightens the gloomy morning. Paint in bright greens, blues, yellows, violets, and oranges swirls across the wood like little currents of color, a welcome to anyone approaching. She remembers painting it one warm evening a long while ago, following intuition with a brush in hand, letting color spin and intersect until it felt cheerful and right. When she finally paused, she noticed her overalls and hands sprayed with tiny freckles of paint and laughed at the delightful mess of it. Pleased to have set a bit of brightness into something ordinary, she slides a brass key into the lock and turns it. Hinges murmur as the door opens onto the darkened interior. After a quick shake of the umbrella outside, she reaches in and taps the light switch. A clean glow fills the room, and she breathes out with contentment. It is a good feeling returning here. The combined fragrance of flour, sugar, and espresso beans drifts in from the open kitchen, a lingering echo from yesterday's work. There is, too, a faint suggestion of toasted pecans from the pie she baked before closing. She mentally reviews the plan for the morning. The ovens go on first. Heat begins to gather. Cinnamon rolls will lead things off, as they so often do, though she decides to add toasted pecans for a pleasant little crunch. She brings together the metal pieces of the espresso machine, which she left to dry overnight. Later, there will be pumpkin pie. Every year around now, people begin asking when she will have them ready. Some take a single slice. Others hope to carry home a whole pie for their families. She moves to the seating nook and finds the outlet near the baseboard. When she plugs in the string of fairy lights, they awaken in a gentle shimmer above her, and she stills for a breath. She tips her head up, inhales, and lets the breath leave slowly. It matters to pause for moments like this, she thinks. They are small, but they make everything feel quietly enchanted. With the lights twinkling overhead, she returns behind the counter to the open kitchen. From there, she can see the entire shop and easily step from the baking table to the espresso machine once the doorbell begins to ring. 2 large white buckets of dough have been resting under the counter all night. She draws them out and tips the risen dough onto the wooden work surface. She spreads it gently, sprinkles cinnamon sugar and the toasted pecans, and then uses her fingertips to coax the sheet into a long roll. Slices fall into neat rounds, little spirals of filling visible within. A bit more cinnamon sugar drifts over the tops, and then the tray goes into the oven. The fragrance is immediate, warmth from the oven mingling with the sweetness of spice, so familiar that it feels like the bakehouse itself is welcoming her back. When the timer chimes, she draws the pan out and settles it on a wire rack to cool. Now the pie can begin. She crosses to the pantry at the rear, opens the door and considers it, smiling. This room feels like her private cupboard of wonders. There are tubs of flour and baking powder stacked below large canisters of spices and bottles that hold vanilla, almond, and citrus extracts. A glass jar holds vanilla beans like dark, curled feathers. There is star anise, ground cloves, poppy seeds in a jar that hums when shaken, onion powder, roasted garlic, and a small pinch pot of chili flakes. On the low shelf toward the back rest several sugar pumpkins from a nearby farm. She selects one of mid-size and tucks it beneath her arm. In a large metal mixing bowl, she gathers the spices and a few wooden spoons, balancing everything with the competent ease of someone accustomed to carrying too much at once. On the counter, she lays out the ingredients. The pumpkin must be roasted first. She halves it carefully, scoops away the threads and seeds, places the halves cut side down on a baking sheet, and slides the tray into the oven to soften. While heat performs its slow work, she turns to the crust. Many crusts are possible, but the one she favors is graham cracker, an old family choice learned from her Aunt Lila, who used to bake a little pie for every child during the holidays. Mira takes a plastic sleeve of crackers from a blue carton and sets it on the counter. She covers the packet with a clean tea towel, lifts her heavy rolling pin, and gently rolls over the towel until the crisp squares crush and give way. She moves the pin side to side, feeling the warmth of the wooden handles beneath her palms. The crackers break with soft snaps and crumble into coarse sand. She opens the edges of the sleeve and pours the crumbs into a bowl, a light dust rising and making her nose tickle. From the silver refrigerator she retrieves a stick of butter, frees it from its waxy wrapper, and drops it into a measuring cup to melt. A few quiet seconds later, the butter runs golden and warm into the crumbs. She adds sugar and a touch of cinnamon, then works everything together with a long spoon until the mixture has the feel of wet sand. With her fingertips, she presses the mixture into a shallow pie dish, encouraging it up the sides and smoothing as she goes so the edges do not crack. A little more here, a little less there, until the base is even and ready. The timer signals again. She slips on her thick, bright oven mitts, removes the pan with the softened pumpkin, and replaces it with the pie dish so the crust can take on a slight firmness that will support the liquid filling. She sets a new timer for 12 minutes, long enough to give it the faint crunch it needs. Just then, the shop door makes its familiar creak. The first customer of the morning arrives, much as he always does. It is Mr. Keene, a kindly older gentleman who likes to sit by the window with a cinnamon roll and a cup of coffee while he works through the daily paper. On mornings like this, when pumpkin pie is in the air, he is especially cheerful. He moves toward the counter with the unhurried rhythm of long habit. By now, he rarely needs to say anything. Mira already knows his order and has the coffee in hand by the time he reaches her. He remarks with quiet delight that pumpkin pie must be coming, and she assures him that once it is baked, she will bring a slice to his table. He thanks her, takes his mug, and chooses his usual seat facing the street. The newspaper opens with a crisp whisper, and the room feels officially awake. Mira appreciates the ways the shop feels different when he is there. He has become part of the place, as have so many who stop in day after day. They are a little community, perhaps even a family of sorts, and this bakehouse is their shared harbor. When the timer tells her the crust is ready, she pulls on the mitts once more and removes it. The scent, warm, sweet, lightly toasted, seems to her exactly the sort of fragrance Mr. Keene would declare heavenly. She turns to the filling at last. With a spoon, she scoops the orange flesh from the pumpkin skins and drops it into a large bowl. A wooden spoon mashes and smooths the puree until the texture is even and velvety. She brings eggs and heavy cream from the refrigerator. One by one, eggs are cracked and added, and then she pours in the cream. Its pale richness threads through the bright orange like little pearly streams finding their way down a hillside. Spoonfuls of cinnamon, ground ginger, nutmeg, cloves, and cardamom follow. Aromas that, for her, call up nearly everything reassuring about this time of year. The room feels as though it is holding her in a warm embrace of memory and scent. She grates the slightest bit of lemon zest over the bowl for brightness, a tiny ribbon of lift, then stirs once more until the mixture becomes perfectly smooth and soft. She pours the filling into the crust with care, and with a spatula she coaxes the very last traces from the sides of the bowl, making sure not even a single spoonful is left behind. Then, she carries the trembling, custard-bright pie with both hands, moving slowly so the filling will not ripple over the crust, and settles it onto the oven rack with care. The timer begins its soft countdown, granting her a little pocket of stillness. Leaning back against the work table, she lets her gaze travel across the shop. In the corner, a small bookcase holds contributions from many visitors, dog-eared paperbacks, glossy art volumes, and, among them, a few mystery novels she herself placed there after finishing them. Passing a good story along pleases her. She likes imagining a new pair of eyes lighting up at a favorite twist. Beside the shelf rests a tiny children's rocking chair, its paint worn and bright in patches. She had discovered it at a second-hand store years ago and brought it home for the littlest guests. Over time, young hands adorned it with their own embellishments: flowers, bees, looping lines, and the fine scratches that testify to happy use. A cue from the oven pulls her back. When she opens the door, heat blooms against her cheeks. An exhale so warm it could almost be a dragon's breath, and with it rises a fragrance both nutty and sweet, savory and cozy all at once. She lifts the pie out, sets it on the counter, and lets it settle while she clears the work area. Bowls stacked, rolling pin wiped, cups set to dry. At the window, Mr. Keene's glance keeps drifting toward the cooling pie with the kind of hopeful curiosity she has come to know well. The expression makes her laugh softly. She cuts a generous slice for him, then decides there will be another for her as well. It has already been quite a morning, and few things feel kinder than sharing something warm and delicious with an old friend. On two small white plates, she lays the slices and finishes each with a soft peak of freshly whipped cream. She carries them to the table by the window and takes the chair across from him. He responds exactly as she expected. Pleased, nostalgic, declaring with fond certainty that the first pumpkin pie of the season always smells like this. She tastes her portion. The pumpkin's brightness meets her tongue with a gentle tang, while the spice moves through her senses in a deep, aromatic wave that makes everything feel settled and very right. This, she thinks, is precisely as it ought to be. As the pie disappears a bite at a time, she lets her eyes wander through the room with quiet pride. Good company, on a rain-washed autumn day, is a blessing that glows softly, and she feels it now. The fairy lights hum in steady sparkle, their rhythm seeming to answer the rain's patient tapping on the glass. Details like these, the twinkle above, the patter outside, the sturdy tables and their fine scratches, compose the story of this place. The bakehouse speaks of everyone who has stepped through its creaking door, everyone who found warmth here for a few minutes or an hour. Contentment settles in her chest with a sense of rightness so complete that she thinks, without reservation, that she is exactly where she belongs. Rain strikes the window near her bed in delicate taps. From time to time, wind rises and sends a quick scatter of drops against the pane with a bolder touch. Mira lies under her covers with her eyes closed, listening to the storm's ebb and flow. Today will be a wind-whipped one, she decides, lively and changeable. She savors those last moments before getting up, when her thoughts still float and a trace of sleep lingers like a gentle perfume. A yawn catches her, and she stretches, arms reaching wide. She circles her ankles, first to the right, then to the left, so they will be ready for the cool floorboards when she stands. A deep breath goes in, and a slow breath leaves, and her body slides more comfortably into the softness of the sheets. Just one more minute, she thinks with a private smile. The rain moves in waves, like a curtain opening and closing. A stronger gust rattles the branches outside, and bursts of droplets patter toward the house. Weather like this always energizes her. There is something about wind and rain that invites small experiments, little departures from routine. She swings her legs over the edge of the mattress and rises, glancing out into the dark. It is still early. She keeps hours few others do, and there is satisfaction in being the one to gather the morning into the bakehouse so others can find it ready. Most of the neighborhood sleeps on. Even the cats, she imagines, are curled into warm circles on cushions by the windows, with noses tucked into their tails, waiting for the first hint of dawn. Slippers welcome her feet. She pads softly to the kitchen and sets water to boil for a strong cup of hot tea. The kettle's hush builds, and then the bubbling begins to murmur. From the drawer, she takes a metal tea ball and fills it with loose black leaves. Slender, fragrant, springy enough to try escaping as she twists on the top. A little chain and hook let it dangle properly inside the cup. When the water is ready, she pours. Bubbles bloom around the tea ball, which rises and gently bobs before settling. Color fans outward, an amber bloom swirling and deepening, and steam carries the scent she loves on cold mornings. Feeling more impulsive than usual, she decides to skip the usual splash of milk. Black tea today. Still, routine calls to her, so she carries the cup to the wooden bench beneath the kitchen window, the place where she always takes the day's first sips and watches the quiet street. Sometimes, by now, the earliest light would be lifting the clouds, but not today. A gray blanket has dropped low over the town, and the rain does not pause, though the wind nudges and reshapes its pattern. Across the way, branches bend and sway. Definitely a coat day, she thinks. She drinks slowly. Warmth gathers behind her sternum and moves outward. Her toes wiggle inside fuzzy slippers, sending tiny tingles into her feet, and she decides that this morning might be the most perfectly cozy kind. Wet and windy out there, snug and steaming in here. When the tea is gone, she rinses the cup and places it on the bamboo rack to dry. The sun still hides, but time insists. Her internal clock, so carefully set by years of opening, tells her the precise moment to leave. She seldom needs to check a timepiece. She simply knows. In the bedroom, she chooses a gray shirt to echo the weather. At the door, she slips into her heavy wool coat and fastens it. A thick cable-knit scarf follows, the generous gift of a faithful customer named Hazel from a couple of winters back, and she feels the familiar wave of gratitude it always brings. The scarf means friendship, warmth, and the sweetness of being part of others' routines. She pulls one edge up over her chin and tucks the ends into the coat, then retrieves stout gloves from the pockets and pulls them on. The last essential is her bright yellow umbrella. With that gathered, she steps outside. The door clicks. On the step, she braces the umbrella against the wind and pushes the slider upward. The gust tries to defeat her, but she coaxes the frame open until the canopy blooms, a cheerful burst of yellow in the slate-dark morning. Rain thunders against the fabric, the sound magnified beneath the shelter so that each plop and splat becomes distinct, like a percussion section playing close to the ear. She glances up at the familiar window where a white cat often keeps watch. Today, the little sentinel sleeps, nose tucked neatly under its fluffy tail, blissfully unconcerned with the weather. Usually, it would be tidying its paws or regarding her with calm attention. This morning is a lazy one for the feline. For a heartbeat, she imagines choosing the cat's plan instead, curling back up, letting the weather do as it pleases. Then she thinks of the people who will come, the ones who smile when the bell over the door rings and the warm air greets them. They are the reason she leaves home in all conditions and turns the key at Myra's Drizzly Day Bakehouse. She makes her way along the slick sidewalk, shifting left and right to avoid the widest puddles. The pavement glows with reflections from the streetlights, and the sky remains so heavy it seems reluctant to permit dawn. Likely it will feel like twilight until noon, she muses. Up ahead, even in the dimness, the painted door announces itself. Bright swirls promising refuge, something hot to hold, something sweet to savor. People come to read a few pages, choose a slice of pie, break a cinnamon roll in half, and talk softly with someone they have known for years, or someone they met only last week. The shop has become woven into the day-to-day fabric of this place. It is a home other than home, a spot where contentment is easy to find. Her thought is cut short by a muscular punch of wind. The umbrella shudders, the handle leaps, and, in an instant, the canopy inverts, flipping backward with a snap. Exposed to the rain, she gathers herself and hurries the remaining steps to the bright door. Brass keys jingle. The right one turns in the lock. She tucks the troublesome umbrella under one arm, slips inside, and closes the door behind her. Darkness and quiet greet her. She wipes her shoes on the mat to spare the floor a parade of wet footprints, then flicks the lights on with a tap. White glow pools across the room. She inspects the umbrella. A few struts bent the wrong way, the slider no longer catching properly, the canopy unwilling to stay open. With a rueful breath, she sets it near the entry. It has served faithfully for years, but its useful life seems to have ended somewhere between gust and puddle. She had planned to remain here until evening. Shopping for a replacement may not happen today. It might be a damp walk home, and that will be all right. Weather belongs to this place as surely as cinnamon and coffee do, and she is used to making the best of it. She lets in a deliberate breath and lets it out, refocusing on the day's work. The room carries yesterday's trace. Espresso, flour, pecans. Ordinarily, she would begin with cinnamon rolls, but the sound of the rain and the mood of the wind have nudged her toward small changes, just as they did with her tea. She plugs in the strand of fairy lights over the seating area. Moments later, they glitter like tiny quartz points overhead. Feeling newly buoyant, she returns to the pantry. Her eyes travel across the shelves. Sacks of flour stacked like pillows, canisters of sugar and oats, jars of spices, tins of baking powder, bottles of extracts, bags of nuts, and the innumerable small items that, taken together, mean possibility. She asks herself what she wants to make. There was a blueberry pie 2 days back, lemon squares and a pecan braid yesterday, chocolate muffins late last week. All favorites, all reliable. Yet today invites something different, something that would make her personally happy. A few years ago, she had rediscovered her grandmother's cookbook tucked on a shelf at the old family house. Leafing through, she had found a recipe she did not recognize and slid a piece of scrap paper into the spine to mark it. That cookbook now rests on a dark wooden case along the pantry's back wall. She retrieves it, opens to the marked page, and smiles. The title is unassuming: Baked Apples. The paper has yellowed. The margins carry her grandmother's looping hand, perfect for a chilly autumn day. Across the page, small corrections and notes adjust measurements and offer quiet advice. This is the one, she decides. New to her hands, old in the family. The list of needs is short: butter, brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, rolled oats, chopped pecans, and several large apples. She gathers them and returns to the counter. Butter is left to soften. Pecans are chopped and set aside. Oats are measured. The oven wakes with a turn of the dial and begins to warm. The next step requires care. She will hollow the apples without splitting them, creating small chambers to cradle the filling. Beside the instructions, her grandmother had written a margin note in a tidy underline. Use paring knife and spoon. Mira takes the knife, guides the tip near the stem, and cuts in a slow circle toward the core. A gentle twist helps the center detach, and with a careful pull it comes away. The hollow reminds her of a pumpkin after its seeds are scooped. Clean, tidy, ready. She sets the first apple aside and continues. Soon the movement becomes fluid. Insert, circle, twist, draw. until a neat row of waiting apples lines the board. Time for the filling. Softened butter meets brown sugar. Cinnamon and nutmeg follow. The spoon mashes and folds until spice is evenly distributed. Oats and pecans are stirred in, turning the mixture into something textured and fragrant. With a smaller spoon, she fills each apple cavity to the brim, pressing gently so the mixture sits firmly. Prepared apples go into ceramic pie dishes. A bit of water is poured into each dish so the bottoms of the apples rest in a shallow pool. A margin note had explained why. Prevents drying and burning. Thick mitts on. She transfers the dishes into the oven and sets the timer, which will call her back at the right moment. As she begins to tidy her station, the front door gives its familiar creak. Hazel arrives, a favorite regular who has, over the years, become a friend. Hazel smiles from the threshold, shakes off the rain, and drapes her scarf over a chair. By the time she reaches the counter, Mira already has the coffee ready. Hazel's expression warms and she asks, with genuine interest, how the morning has been so far, inviting the small, happy telling of wind-blown umbrellas, batter bowls, and apples waiting to soften. Mira tells Hazel about the plan for baked apples, the old family recipe, the one her grandmother annotated in looping letters, and admits she is quietly thrilled to have a first taster from among her dearest regulars. The two of them talk for a few minutes about the weather, marveling at how the wind keeps swooping down the street and shouldering the rain into new directions, turning an ordinary autumn downpour into something decidedly spirited. With a small sigh, Mira mentions an inconvenience, the umbrella that gave up in the gusts. She is not sure she will have time to find a replacement before closing, and she imagines the walk home will be wetter than usual. Hazel squeezes her arm in a gentle, reassuring way and says things have a habit of working out. Then she carries her coffee to a table and settles in. Before long, the bell over the door sounds again. Mr. Keene arrives with his familiar unhurried step. She has his coffee ready by the time he reaches the counter, and she promises to bring him a baked apple as soon as they emerge from the oven. After that, the morning regulars drift in one by one. Some appear as though they have waded straight through the storm, their coats freckled with rain. Others shield their heads with folded newspapers or shake umbrellas with quick snaps just inside the doorway, sending bright beads of water scattering onto the mat. She moves from person to person with practiced ease, pouring coffees, steeping teas, and setting out small, sweet comforts. When the timer calls, she turns from the seating area toward the ovens and draws out the pie dishes. The apples have turned soft and luscious, their edges glistening. From the corner of her eye, she notices Hazel speaking to different customers at several tables. She wonders in passing what those conversations might be. Perhaps the sort of neighborly check-ins that make mornings feel friendly. But the thought slips away as her attention returns to the apples. She lifts each one from the shallow water and places it on its own plate. From the refrigerator, she retrieves cream. A bowl, a spoonful of sugar, the hum of a handheld mixer, and within moments the white peaks hold their shape. As the beaters spin, she glimpses Hazel slipping out the door, and a small puzzled thought rises. Hazel has not even tried the apples yet. The peaks are ready now, the mixer is set aside. With a metal spoon, she crowns each apple with whipped cream and a modest ribbon of her caramel. The sauce the regulars talk about, as if it were a little enchantment, glossy and warm. The fragrance, hot apples, spice, cream, spreads through the room and makes everything feel like home. She carries the first plate to Mr. Keene, then takes plates to the family seated in the corner, to the woman reading her paper, and to the man who tends to choose cranberry scones. As she moves among the tables, Hazel returns. In Hazel's hand is a long, slender shape wrapped in shiny paper. She catches Myra's eye and beckons. Mira comes over. Hazel presents the parcel. A handwritten note is affixed to the outside. To Mira, from all your friends at the Drizzly Day Bakehouse. Mira unwraps the gift and finds a new umbrella, green scattered with cheerful yellow polka dots, the handle carved in the shape of a duck's head. She laughs in delighted surprise and declares, with absolute sincerity, that she has never seen an umbrella so cheerful in her whole life. Gratitude rises fast and bright. She looks up and finds other faces turned toward her, smiling with the kind of warmth that steals the chill from any day. The realization lands. This is not just from Hazel. This is from everyone. The knowledge fills her with a radiant sense of belonging. She tells Hazel she has something for her as well and slides one of the 2 remaining baked apples across, keeping the final one for herself. They sit by the window together, the weather still gray and blustery on the other side of the glass. But in here every element seems softly lit, safe, warm, and held by kindness. Mira spoons a bit of tender apple and syrupy filling. The balance is perfect, spice-forward, sweet enough, and somehow even lovelier for being guided by her grandmother's margin notes and shared with a dear friend. On another morning, when she first opens her eyes, the sound that greets her is rain, gentle, patient, and without any pressing wind. The rhythm is steady, droplets meeting the earth with the same soft syllable again and again. She yawns, lifts her arms long overhead, stretches her legs until her toes feel pleasantly far away, then eases herself back into the cradle of the mattress for a last small moment of quiet. Today is a big one. She will host the annual cookie decorating gathering at the bakehouse. She prepared several batches of sugar cookies yesterday, and there is still more dough to make before people arrive later in the morning. Of all the traditions of the year, this is among her favorites. The bakehouse is always a nice place to be, but on cookie day it bubbles with warmth and laughter and the bright, open smiles of neighbors and friends. She stretches once more, moves her legs over the side of the bed, and sits up. Slippers are where she left them. The robe waits on its hook. Wrapped in its softness, she pads to the kitchen. The routine begins as it almost always does, the kettle on first. While it warms, she fills a metal tea ball with a cranberry orange spiced black tea that feels made for winter. When the water sings, she pours it through the tea ball into the cup and inhales as the spiced steam gathers around her face. A brief swirl of milk follows. She carries the cup to the wooden window bench. Light comes late at this point in the season. The street outside still belongs to night. A faint glow from a neighbor's nightlight is the only illumination beyond her own kitchen. Because she opens the bakehouse each morning, she keeps hours earlier than most, and she has always liked being the first to coax the day along for others, with coffee, with something sweet, with the simple cheer of a door that opens early. She sits for a while, watching and thinking. The sky remains a thick, close gray. The forecast hinted at snow. She brushes the back of her hand against the cold glass and decides the air needs to drop just a little further before flakes will appear. Snow changes the bakehouse in small ways, makes it feel gently enchanted, and she would not mind seeing that transformation today. Tea finished, she rinses the cup and sets it on the bamboo rack to dry. In the bedroom, she dresses and reaches for the sweater she reserves for this particular day each year. It was a gift from long ago, and it makes her smile every time she sees it. A friendly snowman set against tall trees, knit from small squares that make its grin look goofily endearing. Customers delight in it, too, and the sweater has become part of the ritual. At the entry, she layers coat, scarf, hat, and gloves. Then she picks up her new umbrella, the green one dotted with yellow and topped with a duck's head, and loops the cord around her wrist. The door clicks shut behind her. She steps into the early drizzle. The rain is more of a mist now than an outright shower, but she prefers the envelope of dryness and warmth the umbrella grants. She opens it and watches the drops patter against the bright fabric. Every time she lifts this umbrella, she thinks of the people who gave it, and the thought brings comfort that feels as real as the shelter above her. Through the watery polka dots, she glances toward the familiar window. Instead of a white cat, a black cat sits close to the glass today, alert and observant. Then a flicker of white appears just behind, and she recognizes a familiar tail. The two cats settle themselves, a half-moon of dark fur and a half-moon of light, curled into a shape that seems to complete itself. The sight pleases her. The white cat has a new friend. It will have company when the day is long. She continues toward the bakehouse with a small smile. The door, painted in a swirl of many colors, comes into view as the first trace of morning edges the horizon. Just enough light to separate one hue from another. She slides the key into the lock, turns the handle, and steps into the interior warmth. The umbrella is shaken lightly and left to rest in the entry. She wipes her shoes on the mat, pauses for a deliberate breath to mark the shift from street to shop, and notices the familiar fragrance coming forward. Roasted coffee and a faint echo of burnt sugar from yesterday's trays, reminiscent of toasted marshmallow with its sharp sweetness. A fingertip on the switch wakes the lights. The room brightens. She crosses to the seating area, plugs in the fairy lights, and watches them scatter their tiny stars above. Today will not begin with cinnamon rolls. There is cookie work waiting. She heads to the pantry and draws out the dry ingredients for double batches of two kinds: chocolate chip and stained glass sugar cookies. Flour, white sugar, brown sugar, vanilla extract, black treacle, chocolate chips, cornstarch, salt, a bag of bright hard candies for the stained glass centers. From the refrigerator, baking soda and eggs. Butter already sits softened to just the right give. She organizes the ingredients into their separate batches, combines dry and wet in turn, and stirs until the chocolate chip dough reaches that perfect, scoopable texture. Chocolate chips are folded in carefully so they remain intact. Even mounds drop onto a tray with an ice cream scoop, and the tray slides into the oven. For the stained glass batch, the dough is wrapped and tucked into the refrigerator to rest. Chilling will let it roll and cut cleanly later. The air begins to change as the first tray bakes. The smell of cookies is one of those scents that returns a room to childhood warmth. It makes any space feel instantly lived in and welcoming. As if on cue, the door opens. Mr. Keene appears, punctual as ever, ready to pair his coffee with whatever is just coming out of the oven. On most days, he chooses a cinnamon roll. On this day, he enjoys being the first to test the cookies, insisting with a familiar twinkle that quality control is a noble responsibility. She has his coffee poured before he reaches the counter and slides it toward him. He adjusts the newspaper tucked beneath his arm and asks, with hopeful eyes on the oven, about this year's lineup. She describes the plan: chocolate chip, plain sugar, and stained glass, and he gives a mock serious nod that seems to say he will clearly need to evaluate each variety to make absolutely certain they have turned out properly. She laughs and tells him she would not attempt cookie day without his expert opinion. He chooses the window seat and looks out on a street stippled with puddles. Behind the clouds, the very first light of morning shifts the sky from deep slate to a paler gray. The timer sounds. Mitts on. She opens the oven to a sigh of heat. The chocolate chip cookies are puffed and golden, the chocolate glossy and thick while still holding to its shape. She sets the tray on a wire rack to cool. The sugar-sweet scent pours across the room like a benevolent spell. Soon it is time to retrieve the sugar cookie dough from the refrigerator. It gives just slightly under her fingers. Ready. On the wooden table, the rolling pin moves in smooth, even strokes until the sheet reaches the right thickness. She cuts squares, rectangles, and circles. Then, using a second set of cutters, she removes small shapes from the centers: bells, trees, ornaments, snowflakes, and more. The cookies are arranged on a prepared sheet. Handfuls of hard candy are sorted by color into small bags. The rolling pin becomes a tool for transformation again, this time turning candy into a bright, sparkling rubble. A teaspoon sprinkles the colored shards into the cutouts so that, once heat does its work, each cookie will hold a window of translucent glass, framed on all sides by a crisp edge. Trays slide into the oven. She takes a moment to breathe and watch the day gather itself. Outside, the drizzle persists, but the sky has shifted toward brightness. People begin to emerge, some walking, some driving, and inside the door regulars trickle in, including Hazel and a neighbor named Gwen Spencer with her 2-year-old twin boys. The twins are easy to tell apart only because one wears glasses. Otherwise, they are nearly mirrored. Red shirts, blue jeans, and green fuzzy walker socks padding across the floor. They toddle happily through the kids' corner and greet guests with the kind of open cheer that makes strangers smile. They also know, from many past visits, that Mira will likely have a tiny sweet for them. The sight reminds her that the preparations for the decorating party still need finishing. She wipes her hands on her apron and heads to the pantry. From shelves and tins and jars she gathers everything. Sprinkles in a startling variety, long, flat, round, plus tiny gold and silver dragées. Jars of colored sugars, green, blue, red, yellow, purple, chocolate curls, flakes of coconut, and a tin of crushed peppermint. All of it goes into a large basket, which she carries to the seating area. On every table she arranges an enticing spread. Bowls of decorations, tubes of icing, bright gel colors, shakers of powdered sugar. From the very back of the pantry, she brings out a large metal tree, a display whose branching arms are ridged so ornaments can hang all the way down. But, instead of ornaments, the display tree will be devoted to as many decorated cookies as it can possibly cradle. When the timer signals from the kitchen, Mira returns to the oven and slides out the stained glass trays. She cannot help smiling. They turned out exactly as she hoped. Each cookie holds a glossy panel at its center, shining red, blue, orange, yellow, or green. So vivid it seems the light above is passing straight through sugar. While they cool, she brings out the plain sugar cookies she baked the day before, already cut into cheerful shapes. Snow people, evergreen silhouettes, snowflakes, and stars. Piece by piece, she arranges all the varieties on large silver platters so that every table will have its own selection, giving guests the freedom to choose any canvas they like. Before she carries the big trays into the seating area, she makes a small delivery. On a side plate, she places one of each kind and sets it before Mr. Keen. His grin broadens as he lifts the chocolate chip cookie and takes a thoughtful bite. The breath he lets out is full of appreciation. He declares, with the same delighted certainty he finds each year, that these might be the finest cookies she has ever produced. In fact, they may well be perfect. The words land with a warm weight. Satisfaction rises in her chest. Every time someone enjoys a roll, a croissant, or a cookie she has baked, the knowledge brightens the day like a lamp in a window. She returns to the counter, gathers the larger trays, and distributes them to the tables. A glance at the clock tells her that the first guests will arrive any moment. Right on cue, the door opens. A family new to town steps inside, taking in the scene with a shy sweetness that makes her want to welcome them twice. She waves and invites them to choose any table and begin whenever they wish. They nod gratefully and settle near the door. An elderly couple appears next, grandparents visiting for a few days, who make a point of stopping by whenever they can. They greet Mr. Keen with neighborly warmth and then set themselves up. Soon the room fills with people she recognizes from around the community. Some alone, some with children or friends or partners, and everyone here is invited to the yearly decorating party. Chairs fill, clusters gather. Every table is ringed by hands reaching for sprinkles and tubes and little bowls of color. Hum builds. Bright talk, easy laughter. The tiny shaker sounds of decorations tapping against glass. The soft squeeze and sigh of icing leaving its tube, and the unmistakable air of people having a fine time in a familiar place. Looking around the cozy space, Mira feels a whole body peace. It is difficult to imagine a better place to be. Just then, she glances out the window and catches the first snowflakes drifting downward. A child notices a moment later and alerts her mother in a small, amazed voice. The room quiets as people turn toward the glass. Outside, a delicate white settles on cars, on lamps, on paving stones, on everything. She wonders whether the two cats across the street are watching, too, noses at the window, eyes following the flakes. Perhaps it is the buoyancy of being surrounded by neighbors, or perhaps it is the soft enchantment of winter itself. But she finds herself drawn to step out and feel the cool touch of snow on skin, just for a moment. She slips around the counter and opens the door. On the threshold, she lifts her face to the gray-white sky, spreads her arms, and turns slowly, a quiet circle. Snow kisses her cheeks and the bridge of her nose. She cannot help smiling until her eyes crinkle. She places her tongue out as she did when she was small and catches a single cold star. Then another. Flakes find her sleeves, her palms, the wool at her wrists. She laughs softly, then stops and looks upward again, absorbing the hush that snow lays over the day. In the distance, a crow waddles across the new white, leaving neat tracks. She glances down and sees her own boot prints, pleased by how they mark this small instant. She lifts a hand in a playful farewell, to the crow, to the falling snow, and steps back inside. Warmth gathers her at once. The room has shifted into a gentle bustle. Everywhere she looks, delight takes cookie form. Small snow people with scarves and hats. Green trees bejeweled with candy ornaments. White and blue snowflakes with lace-thin edges. White candles with curled yellow flames. Stained glass cookies carry a dusting of powdered sugar and dangle from lengths of ribbon and string. The chocolate chip batch shows a few specimens with investigative bites already missing. Guests begin to hang some of their ornaments on the metal tree in the corner. Many will take their creations home, but quite a few will leave one behind to shine here until the new year. Mira lifts a stained glass cookie, breaks off a bite, and closes her eyes to notice everything at once. The buttery crumble melting, the sweet pain at the center. The way a just-baked cookie is its own kind of happiness. The rest of the day will be spent helping friends dream up endless designs and perhaps claiming a small afternoon coffee as a private treat. For now, she is content to stand still for a heartbeat and take in the bright, festive air while snow continues to drift past the window. Rain returns on another morning, tapping lightly and bringing her awake with patience. She keeps her eyes closed a few seconds longer, savoring the drowsy edge between dreaming and day. Without meaning to, she dozes for a breath or two, the rainfall blending with images of glistening streets and quick silver puddles behind her eyelids. Then, gradually, the drift recedes and she is wholly in her room. She smiles and opens her eyes, grateful for those extra minutes of rest. Even now, the rain grows fainter. It may stop altogether, she thinks, and stretches her arms overhead until her shoulders feel warm and loose. She traces circles with her toes to wake her ankles, then swings her legs to the floor. Slippers meet her feet. She pads to the kitchen. The kettle goes on as it nearly always does. She loves the sound of bubbles organizing themselves inside, the way it becomes a calm undercurrent to the morning's silence. Bubbles and rain, steady companions that make the early hour feel like home. She spoons dry leaf into a tall tea ball, twists the top, and hooks the chain over the rim of the mug. When the water boils, she pours and watches the clear swirl turn amber as the leaves steep. The color patterns are never quite the same twice, and that pleases her. How something so familiar still offers small, new variations. A little milk goes in. She carries the cup to the wooden bench by the window. Outside is still mostly night. The rain has softened to mist, and thread-like fingers of fog begin to draw themselves in behind the house across the street. The neighbor's garden, so carefully tended in the greener months, still appears orderly, even now, with autumn's browns, reds, and yellows strewn like deliberate paint across the grass. The neighborhood remains asleep. She might be among the earliest risers for blocks, and that thought makes her smile. The hours her work demands suit her well. It comforts her to think that others wake knowing this door will open, that a warm place waits for them. Across the way, a patch of newly turned earth catches her eye. Bulbs must have gone in yesterday. The sight nudges her own memory. Outside the bakehouse, she keeps a small garden that has held different experiments over the years. Herbs one season, tomatoes and peppers another. Now it is meant to be flowers. The bulbs need their chance to root in cool earth so they will be ready to wake when spring comes. She reminds herself to bring them along today. She finishes her tea and looks out once more. The fog has gathered around the neighbor's house and begun to move down the street. The forecast had mentioned this, and she is pleased. Fog has always felt a little magical to her, like a curtain behind which quiet wonders are waiting. The thought makes her grin. She rinses the cup, leaves it on the rack, and goes to dress. A red shirt with yellow details seems right. Something bright to carry into a gray day. By the door, a paper bag of bulbs waits. Daffodils, narcissus, crocuses, and hyacinths. They are roundish and firm with give beneath her fingers. The hues and shapes remind her of onions, garlic, and small turnips stained with a purplish blush. She slips on her coat and tucks the bag carefully into the large pocket, then adds hat and gloves and loops the cord of her green and yellow polka umbrella around her wrist. When she opens the door, she pauses, looking into a street that has become soft-edged in every direction. The fog limits everything to a few houses worth of space. She draws a breath. The air feels newly washed, cool, and invigorating. Shallow puddles pepper the pavement, but none force a detour. Her boots carry her directly along, light steps, small splashes. Cannot have rained long or hard overnight. Grateful for a chance to walk without opening the umbrella, she tilts her face upward. Fog threads itself among the treetops and along the brown branches, weaving in and out of the last colorful leaves. She extends her hand and quietly swishes it through the air. Mist accumulates on her skin, beating into tiny droplets. Rather than brush them away, she rubs her hands together and lets the dampness soak in, as if it were a gentle lotion. It soothes her, a small, tactile reminder that she belongs to this street, this weather, these trees and sky. She looks toward the place where she knows the neighbor's house stands. The edge of the drive is visible. The rest is folded into gray-white. Inside, she imagines, the white cat and the black cat are curled into each other's warmth, dreaming of sunlight and catnip. Her own steps make a steady beat on the sidewalk. Fog changes sound, brings it close, makes it feel like a whisper shared between friends. It takes longer than usual to spot the bakehouse door. The painted colors peer from a swirl of fog and then hide again. She smiles. Even if she could not see it at all, her feet would know the distance. She has walked this way enough mornings to trace it in memory. Still, there is comfort in the sight of it, in knowing that the next breaths of air will smell like coffee and flour and sugar, and that the fairy lights will soon glow. Keys turn. Inside, she wipes her shoes on the mat, flips the lights, hangs her coat, and leaves the bag of bulbs in the pocket for later. She finds the end of the fairy light strand, plugs it in, and watches the shop shift into its familiar, twinkling self. This might be her favorite instant. The click, the tiny stars waking, the quiet thrum of welcome. She breathes in coffee's rich roast, flour's soft dust that always carries a memory of weekend baking with her grandmother, and sugar's sweet, faintly burnt edge that recalls fairground treats and holiday cookies. Shoulders loosen as she exhales. She rolls them slowly to warm the muscles and slips behind the counter. Before closing yesterday, she set out a recipe card for one of her most comforting cold weather projects. Fudge. The page is worn, cocoa smudged, and torn on one corner, enough to conjure the taste even before a pan is set on the stove. Yes, she thinks this is exactly right for today. She loves the simplicity. The base needs only two things: chocolate chips and sweetened condensed milk. She considers flavors. Some regulars always look for peppermint. That will mean peppermint extract and a handful of candy canes to crush on top. Hazel adores hazelnut, so whole nuts should crown another batch. And for herself, she has been craving the deep partnership of orange and dark chocolate. There is even a small jar of candied orange peel that can lend a bright edge. In the pantry, she collects what is needed: her trusted double boiler, pans in the right sizes, waxed paper, bags of chocolate chips, cans of sweetened condensed milk, and the extracts and toppings. She balances everything in her arms and carries it to the counter, then pauses to admire the shine of the double boiler. It is, as her mother used to insist, the quiet secret of properly melted chocolate. Through the years she has tried bowls over simmering pots and other makeshift solutions, but when her mother's advice returned to her whenever chocolate was on the agenda, a proper double boiler makes all the difference. When it came time to open the bakehouse years ago, she honored that guidance and bought one that gleamed. Now she fills the lower pot halfway with water, nests the second pot above it, and sets the stack on the stove. A generous rain of chocolate chips patters into the top pan. As the water below warms, steam rises and coaxes the chocolate to yield. Hard becomes pliant, pliant becomes soft, soft becomes glossy and fluid. With a wooden spoon, she turns the melting pieces in slow circles and watches them settle into a small lake of molten chocolate. Sweetened condensed milk follows, thick and silken, and she stirs until the mixture is unified. Peppermint will lead the trio today, so once she lifts the boiler off the heat, a spoonful of extract goes in. A cool, bracing fragrance unfurls, crisp as frost, and for a heartbeat she thinks of white air, breath clouds, and ice-bright afternoons. Before the mixture can lose its supple flow, she pours it into a wax paper-lined pan. Ribbons of fudge cascade into corners and level themselves like warm lava in a tiny canyon. She scrapes the sides carefully, making sure not even a single streak is wasted, then taps the pan against the counter to chase out any hidden pockets and smooth the surface. Toppings are next. From a drawer she retrieves a sturdy rolling pin. Candy canes, red and white in their crinkling wrappers, are freed from plastic one by one until her fingertips carry the faintest tack of sugar. The canes go into a bag between two towels. The rolling pin travels back and forth. A series of delicate cracks tells her when the candy has surrendered. She sprinkles larger shards for crunch and finer dust for pure peppermint brightness over the cooling slab. The pan joins the cooling racks to rest until slicing time. 2 more batches await. For the second, she zests an orange, the bright flecks falling like confetti into a small bowl to join a measured whisper of orange oil later. Chocolate melts again, steam doing its careful work. Milk folds in, and then zest and oil slip into the dark gloss. The mixture seems to catch the light differently now, silkier and somehow deeper. She can nearly feel how the first square will give on the tongue. Across the top she lays slim curls of candied peel, pressing them just enough so they will set gracefully in place. One spare curl finds its way to her mouth. The sharp citrus spark meets the mellow sweetness and makes her eyes close for a second in pleased surprise. The last batch belongs to Hazelnut. She is about to set fresh water to simmer when Hazel appears at the counter, fog still clinging to her coat. Hazel remarks that the morning streets are so swaddled in gray that at one point she briefly doubted her sense of direction, until, far ahead, she glimpsed the bakehouse windows. The fairy lights had shone like guiding stars, she says, ushering her through the gloom to her home away from home. The telling makes Mira beam. She is doubly delighted to share that hazelnut fudge will be ready later. Hazel clasps her mittened hands with an unmistakable little flourish of joy. A hot coffee is poured and passed across. Hazel carries it to the window seat that suits her best. Mira returns to the stove. The double boiler is ready. Chocolate and milk become one as before. Off the heat, hazelnut flavoring and a scatter of crushed nuts join the bowl, and then the river of chocolate flows into a lined pan. To finish, she sets whole hazelnuts in tidy grids across the top so every finished square will hold exactly one, both for crunch and for that round, toasty note. Across the room, Hazel must catch the fragrance, because Mira sees her smile deepen in contentment. The air itself seems layered now. Peppermint's bright lift, orange's mellow sparkle, hazelnut's rich warmth. An ideal trio for a chilly, fog-draped day. While the pans cool, she decides to use the quiet stretch to plant the bulbs she brought. A slow day means she can keep an eye on the door and still give the garden a little love. She taps Hazel's shoulder lightly to say she will be just outside if needed. Hazel immediately offers to help, which feels like a small gift in itself. Mira adores solitary time with soil and green things, but shared work with a good friend has its own special glow, and after all these years, Hazel is very much that. Coats and scarves go on. The door opens to muted daylight. In the small garden, Mira draws the paper bag of bulbs from her coat pocket while Hazel lifts the lid of a low workbench and finds 2 trowels. They kneel, laughing softly as cool dampness soaks the knees of their trousers. Earth gives way beneath the metal blades. They talk as they dig, about the many seasons this little shop has lived through year after year. There was the birthday mix-up when Max from the hardware store placed his order in a hurry and ended up with 12 dozen cupcakes instead of 2. For a day or two after the party, customers left with extra cupcakes tucked into their bags like cheerful stowaways. And there was that one summer storm that barreled through and took out a few roads, leaving travelers stuck in town until crews could mend the damage. People gathered here then, making coffee, preparing snacks, bringing blankets and children's books and whatever else was needed, turning an unexpected pause into an impromptu, gently festive shelter. We have had some very good times, the conversation implies, as Hazel presses soil around the last bulb and smooths the surface with the flat of her palm. Mira nods, tamping her own neat circle, and then the 2 of them stand. They take a step back in the same small motion, admiring the quiet order of their work. For a moment they say nothing at all, content to share the simple gratitude that arrives when years have been well spent in a place, with people who matter. Through the fogged morning, the fairy lights in the windows flicker and gleam, little steady points that, once again, look very much like guiding stars, drawing in anyone who needs a refuge, in any weather, to the drizzly day bakehouse.